Madam Chair, we are streaming live and recording on Zoom. You may begin when you're ready.
All right, good morning. Welcome to Metro Plan Orlando TSMO meeting. I will call the meeting to order. My name is Christina Colon. I'll be chairing the meeting today. This meeting is in person. It's important for all TSMO members to attend our meetings in person. So all committee members are asked to be present at the Metro Plan Orlando boardroom for us to have a quorum. Members of the public will still be able to participate virtually, and we encourage them to do so. There are 2 public comment points in the meeting. Members of the public attending in person who want to speak need to fill out a comment card. We also accept comments by email and phone message before the meeting. At this time, I'll recognize Mr. Eric Hill, Metro Plan Orlando staff, for an agenda review.
Good morning, Madam Chairwoman, and good morning, committee members in the room and those online. I have a list of things to speak with you about. No certain order here of importance, but I first want to start by recognizing the city of Apopka for receiving a Flash Award from the Florida Department of Transportation that was handed out at the last TSMO consortium meeting. The Flash Award was awarded to them for a rapid response to a dangerous signal failure at US 441 Park Avenue intersection. And they were noted because of the way that it was handled and how they followed certain protocols, but also how they worked with the department and resolving this. So congratulations, Ms. Edie. Next item is traffic signal retiming request. This is our annual traffic signal retiming program. I sent out an email to everyone and asked that they give us their list by May 15th so we can start our next round. Metro Plan Orlando research program series. Metro Plan Orlando is currently wrapping up the second white paper, balancing speed management and emergency response times as part of our research program series. As we plan for the next round of research, we'd like to get some input from our advisory committee members on topics that they would like to prioritize in our research program. This afternoon, Rachel will send an email with a link to a short survey. It should take you about 3 to 5 minutes to complete, and the results will allow us to identify where to focus our efforts in the coming fiscal year. Vision Zero speaker series. The next one is on May 20th at 12 o'clock. This one's going to be on distracted driving, from brain science to street design. Next, as it was announced at our last meeting, there is a NOFO on the next round of Safe Streets for All program. Applications are due May 26th. If your agency plans to apply for this round, please see Laura Balk, who leads our safety efforts. Metro Plan Orlando plans to apply for this round, and our safety team would like to coordinate with other proposing agencies to ensure we're meeting FHWA's requirements to avoid overlapping proposals. We also want to share, and you should have at your places, AAA, the Auto Club Group offers a AAA Promise program, and this is we're going into the prom graduation season. I think many of us remember those days when we graduated from high school or went to the prom, and you may remember how much fun you had. So that's what's happening now, but they have this program. It's information for you as well as for you to share with anyone in your family that is graduating from high school or college and plans to attend the prom.
Eric, if I can just let you know, the handouts are at the door.
Oh, they're not. They're not at. Oh, okay. My apology. Thank you, Rachel. Okay. Next item. Thank you for sharing and completing the regional transportation survey that Metro Plan Orlando has sent out to you. The final UPWP action by our MPO board will be on May 13th. And one that is not listed here, but you should have received, is the 2026 Operations Academy applications are due May the 1st. And for those that are not familiar with this, this is a partnership between ITS America, FHWA, ITE, and this is a TSMO program where you are immersed in TSMO for 2 weeks. I am a graduate. Jeremy Dillmore, he is here. Oh, there he is, back there. Jeremy's a graduate. Laura Balk is a graduate, and I'm not sure who else here. Oh,
Gary.
there you go. Eric is a graduate. Oh, Gary. Oh, I didn't know we had alumni. That's strong here. But as they can probably attest, this is a worthwhile endeavor. I'm not sure if your experience was half virtual and half in person, but my experience was in person. It was 2 weeks, and it's worth attending if you can get away for 2 weeks. They do offer scholarships, so your agency is only on the hook for just providing the transportation. So again, consider it. It is a worthwhile endeavor. The last item, MetroPlan Orlando's office will be closed on May the 25th in honor of my birthday. So no, really, it is my birthday. And we're closing the office. Now, it just happens to be on Memorial Day. It's just a coincidence, but be aware of that. And then lastly, we will be closed on June 19th. This is a day where we commemorate the end of slavery in this United States of America. And at this point, I'd like to invite Mr. Mike Wilson to give us our safety moment.
Thank you, Eric, and good morning, everyone. I'm going to return to the topic of our very first safety moment, which is speed. And a little bit of table setting here of looking at what we discovered in our high injury network through the development of our Vision Zero program. And that is that, of course, the high injury network focuses on just a small number of roads that are overrepresented on our crashes. You see 47% of our KSIs happening on 2% of our road network. The average posted speed for that network is 43 miles per hour. And you can see 10 miles an hour faster for the average 85th percentile speed. And of course, this has ramifications for all road users, but especially for the vulnerable road users. And one of the things we were able to do using our detailed crash data as well as our MyoVision pedestrian count data is get some real understanding of what's the risk of crossing roads at various posted speeds. So we had 36 corridors where we had good pedestrian counts. We applied 10 years of crash data to them. And we just looked at crashes where the pedestrian was crossing the main road and the motorist was not turning. So the assumption is that the motorist is moving at more or less at free flow speed most of the time. And it was irrespective of fault, whether it was the motorist or the cyclist or the pedestrian who failed to yield. And I expected to see kind of a steady ramp going up as we go from 25 on up the 5 mile an hour increments. But take a look at the chart here, and we see that 25 to 35 stays pretty much the same, and then we get a huge jump, about an 8-fold increase when we go up to 40 miles per hour, and not really a whole lot of change at 45. And so this is for all pedestrian crossing crashes. If we just focus on the serious ones, and here I've collapsed the speeds because we have smaller numbers to work with, smaller numbers of crashes. Now we're seeing a 12-fold increase in crash risk. So this is based on pedestrian exposure. And we're also seeing a similar type of jump when we look at bicyclist crashes involving an overtaking motorist. That same kind of increase. So our takeaway on this, if you look at not only the speed but also darkness, there's 3 times the risk for nighttime versus daytime, 8 times the risk for over 40 and over compared to under 40. And then we look at serious, still 3 times for nighttime, but 12 times the risk for 40 and over. So, I think maybe it's time to start looking at this sign, or if anything higher than that, if we're looking at our collectors and arterials, think of this as a warning sign. That particularly when you add darkness, compare a nighttime 40 plus at to a daytime under 40, there's more than 30-fold increase in risk for a serious or fatal pedestrian crash. So that concludes my safety moment for this morning. Well, I think, and not only just for those of us in the room, right, but for the general public, that get that message out, whether you're a pedestrian or a driver or a cyclist. Think of this as a warning sign and act accordingly. So I'd be happy to take any questions.
Any questions for Mike? Thank you.
I have a question. I'm sorry.
I'm sorry.
I mean, I probably could spend all day going through questions on this one. It's a fascinating, topic. Obviously, this relationship between the speed and the, outcomes of these collisions. I was curious if the data that you were using when you collected this, because obviously darkness, right, made a huge contribution.
Mm-hmm.
Were the crashes, did they indicate whether or not the crossing point was lit or unlit? Do we have any of that data broken out just to see what the difference would be in terms of the risk profile?
We have that data. I didn't apply it to the risk analysis, because what was interesting is that in some prior analysis, I found that lit roads in many cases had more pedestrian crashes. They might have more pedestrian exposure as well. And in fact, it kind of makes sense that they would. But no, I hadn't done that analysis. And we're still working with some fairly small numbers here that as you start whittling down, your risk analysis starts to get less viable, statistically. Also should note that, so we're also controlled for number of lanes. So like when we remove 2-lane roads, we still saw that jump from 35 to 40.
All right, Millie?
Yeah, the data that was collected, was that just for Central Florida, just our region here?
Yes, just local roads here.
Has anyone else done this in other regions and found similar results?
Not that I've seen.
Oh, I was just curious.
And sorry, I have a question. So
Sure.
when it comes to the context of this, you said exposure for the pedestrians.
Mm.
Are you referring to like the curb cuts and the crossings?
No, just the count, just the number of pedestrians traveling in the corridor. Yeah, from our video count.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Any other questions? All right, thank you so much, Mike. All right, next we have item 4, agency reports. This is an opportunity for our partner agencies to speak to the committee. If any of our partners wish to provide updates during this slot, please let Rachel and Laura know via email at least a week prior to the TSMO meeting. Today we have Kia Powell for our regular report out from FDOT.
Good morning and happy Friday. My name is Kaya Powell with FDOT, and I'm here in place of Jonathan Scarf for today. First, we have our 3rd annual Central Florida Safety Summit coming up. That's going to be on May 8th in St. Cloud. And the Safety Summit is an annual event celebrating and spreading the awareness of the efforts made by local governments, transportation organizations, law enforcement, advocacy groups, schools, and FDOT to improve safety on local roadways. It's a good event. It's a Friday. We all get together. It's a great community time to see what others have done, and some rewards are given out. But every year we have a great time. Again, that's in St. Cloud this year. And tickets are $35, and they're going to be sold until they're gone. So if you're interested in going, I don't know if the link's been shared, but happy to do that to get tickets. And we'll sell those until the tickets are all sold out. Next, April 20th through 24th through today is National Work Zone Safety Awareness Week. And each year, FHWA recognizes National Work Zone Safety. Awareness Week is to remind drivers that road work is happening across the country on all kinds of roads. The people working in those zones deserve to get home safely at the end of the day. Work zones are temporary, but the risks they present are real. You may have seen a lot of orange awareness on social media. If you see it, go ahead and share it. we'd like to get the word out to as many people as we can. And in closing, I do want to mention that our tentative work program development cycle is kicking off. It is that time of year again, and the District 5 tentative work program for fiscal years 28 through 32 is now underway. There are statewide program planning workshops scheduled for April, May, June, and July. And as we start the 2026 development cycle, we are reviewing all programmed projects thoroughly to ensure every required phase is included in your fiscal years 28 through 32 requests. We are also verifying that all supporting project phases, including environmental and permitting activities, utility coordination, post-design services, planned update, and right-of-way monumentation are fully captured in the programming requests, whether new or adjusted programming. All programming updates or adjustments are due by the end of May 2026. Emails have been sent out for those requests. That will conclude my announcements for today. My information is up on the screen, as well as resources for updates and information about what's going on in District 5.
All right, thank you.
Thank
Any
you.
questions for Kaya? Thank you. Now we'll move to item 5, roll call. Rachel, you may proceed.
Thank you, Madam Chair. If members can please remember to turn on their microphone, respond with here or present, and then mute your microphone. Doig for Barden.
Here.
Boswell.
Here.
Kaba.
Present.
Cologne.
Present.
Crandell.
Here.
Delachey.
Here.
Ide.
Present.
Elisar.
Present.
Elliott Moore. Gordon.
Here.
Henry.
Here.
Hibbert.
Here.
Horn.
Here.
Jameson.
Present.
Lofaso.
Present.
McGrath.
Here.
Falco for Martin. Masterson.
Here.
Mendenhall. Mercado Vasquez.
Here.
Owens. Price.
Present.
Porter for Pullum.
Here.
Sadler.
Present.
Sanchez.
Present.
Sanders.
Here.
Saunier.
Here.
Senerans.
Here.
Homayuni for Singh.
Present.
Smith.
Present.
Wetzel.
Here.
Balone for Williams.
Present.
Womack.
Present.
Yeager.
Present.
Yeargain.
Here.
Madam Chair, that concludes the roll call. We do have a quorum.
Wonderful. Thank you, Rachel. We will now hear public comments on the action items. We ask that you provide your name and address for the record. Please hold your comments to 2 minutes or less. If any members of the public wish to comment and are joining us virtually, please use the raise hand function and you will be recognized. Or dial *9 on your phone keypad. We'll send you a prompt to unmute your mic. Do we have anyone joining us virtually who would like to make a comment?
No hands raised online.
All right. Any members of the public attending in person that wish to make a comment?
No comments received.
Okay. Any written comments?
No.
Okay. Okay, we have 2 action items today. A reminder for members to please use your microphone and state your name when making or seconding a motion. First up, we have requesting approval on the meeting minutes. Those are provided in section 1. And are there any corrections to the minutes? Is there a motion to approve?
Chad Smith, I move to approve.
And
Second, Elisar.
okay. Motion by Smith, second by Alisar. Any discussion? All right, it's been properly moved in second. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, same sign. The motion passes. Our second item is staff's request for amendments to the fiscal 25-26 to 29-30 Transportation Improvement Program. More information can be found in section 2 of your agenda packet. We will hear from Ms. Natalia Barber of MetroPlan Orlando, who will tell us more about this matter.
Good morning, Madam Chair and committee members. I have 5 amendments for you today. two relate to railroad projects. The first one is a $230,000 in federal funds for railroad and utilities work in fiscal year 2026. The second one is a surface rehab at crossing on Eunice Avenue. It's addition of $142,000 in federal funds for railroad and utilities work, also in fiscal year 2026. And the next three relate to links, all in 2026. The first one is addition of $850,000 in transit infrastructure funds for Link's bus shelter program project. The next one is addition of $500,000 in transit infrastructure grant funds for Link's bus acquisition project. And the last one is a addition of $250,000 in transit infrastructure grant funds for digital signage program, and all of them, as I mentioned, in fiscal year 2026. Unless there are any questions, I'm asking for your recommendation of approval of these amendments to that TIP 2026-30 as presented.
All right, do we have any questions for Natalia? Okay, is there a motion?
Motion to approve Sanders.
All right, and a second?
Smith, second.
Any discussion? All right, it has been properly moved in second. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, same sign. The motion passes. We have two presentations today, and we'll hold questions until each presentation ends. Our first one is our very own Eric Hill here. A report on traffic signal retiming working group, and you have the floor.
Thank you, Madam Chair. You make me feel like a local celebrity with that announcement. So I'm going to give an update on the retiming workshop or working group that we've created to change or move our retiming program in a new direction. So we met on March 17th, and this is the agenda. We covered the objectives of what we're trying to do. We did a review of the workshop that we had previously, and then we talked about the tactics on how we do retiming, and then some strategies that we can consider, and then we presented some action steps. So starting with the end in mind, the objective is to optimize our traffic signal retiming program. So we want to look at what this time-space diagram on the left looks like and move it to what's on the right. So just a review of the workshop that we did. What came out of that and what was discussed is creating a framework for enhancing our retiming program. We've identified the strong support amongst the stakeholders for this program. It's across all the agencies. We have good coordination. We want to expand how we evaluate the retiming effort. And there's an inverse relationship between moving vehicles, if you will, and safety. And that's something that we have to be in mind. And then the whole idea of maintenance. If everything that we've invested in is not working properly, or if one of those things is not working properly, then the whole system is not going to work properly. And then this last item, the juice. And I'm not referring to O.J. Simpson for those of a certain age. The juice is the squeeze. The story I've been using is if we want to give a grade to our retiming program, we can go from B to A, or we can go from D to B. And I would suggest that going from D to B is a stronger value proposition than going from just B to A. And so while we may get some squeeze out of the juice by going from B to A, we probably can get more going from D to B. Tactics. So what we have been doing is responding to complaints. And ironically, or more recently, I've gotten a couple calls about some intersections. And, the bottom line is they're over capacity. And there's so much more squeeze out of that we can only get. So the complaints. Then there's the history. When have they been retimed? And do they need to be retimed now? And then land use changes. The other story I used to use is, and I have to get a new one, is, Sunrail. When Sunrail started, before Sunrail, all the traffic went north-south for the most part. Sunrail, we created stations so people went east-west. So we had to, address that. So again, I have to come up with a different story. So this is the infamous BC ratio. When we started, we were doing great, and let's say the market changed, if you will. And so, but we knew this was going to happen. Again, it's that squeeze. We squeezed and we got a lot of juice, and we're starting to get to where we can't squeeze anymore. We're not going to get that much juice. But this is kind of like, I think, what motivated us to start looking at how we do this. And the notion of not just retiming the traffic signals, but how do we optimize this whole program? This is the metrics that we have been using. Suggest that we continue to use these. Of course, addressing those intersections for our vulnerable road users, speeding, which is a concern. Heard Mike speak about this. Looking at end-to-end mobility, and then specific intersections that need to be addressed. So the tactics, what we want to try and do is make it more data-driven. Now, I have to tell the story, and I'll speak to this a little bit later, but there is what's happening and then what the data says. And we know what's happening, but does the data support it? And so we want to make this more data-driven. We want to look at how we can use data to identify those locations where we can get more juice out of the squeeze. I also want to use more data in how we evaluate. We won't just, right now we're looking in our stakeholders, we've been kind of like drawn towards that benefit cost evaluation as an indication of how well we're doing. Well, perhaps we can create an index that's a little bit more comprehensive. And the data that we'll be using, and which we've already been using, is connected vehicles. That data is becoming more and more abundant for us to use. So some of the programs, and this is coming from the workshop, we looked at some of the platforms, data platforms that we could use. Jeremy Dillmore was kind enough to give us a summary of these and plus minuses, how it works, his experience, and where it's being used. So we feel that there are some platforms that we can take advantage of, and we want to look at doing a demonstration with the platform on, how do we select the intersections and then how we evaluate them. Dr. Tien from University of Nevada, Reno, was also a presenter at the workshop. And this is from an article that he published in IT Journal in December of last year. And he shared with us this method that it's a theory, but a method that he's proposing. And he uses WaveSync, which is another data provider, to look at how we manage, optimize, diagnose, and evaluate. It's his mode system. And he's very interested in coming to share more of his research with us. And at the working group, we talked about perhaps using one of our working group meetings to entertain Dr. Tien coming and giving us a presentation. Oops. Oh, yes. Next thing anyway. Strategies, more bigger picture, if you will. Looking at some research opportunities. We talked about Natalia leading this research effort here. Perhaps it's an opportunity for TSMO to identify a subject area that she can do some research on. Legislation, there was some proposed legislation that was going to fund the department's traffic signal program. And as I understood the proposal, it was going to create an opportunity for the locals to have access to the funds as well, but it didn't pass. In terms of innovation, ATSPM is something that's being used. I am not sure how many traffic signals in our region is using it, but should we first inventory, identify, and look at where it's already applied, and do we need to expand our use for this? This next item is one that I have some interest in, but some experience as well. Excuse me. Banning left turns at certain intersections during the peak. just to eliminate, those conflicts. And then contraflow during peak. I grew up in the Philadelphia area, and one of the major thoroughfares in the peak periods, they make it completely, one direction. Takes a lot of education and understanding, but it has worked in a major city. And there's something like this also being done in Washington, D.C. Lenny spoke about his experience, I think in Virginia, where they do something like this. Partner with the OEMs, the original equipment manufacturers, on their technology and what they're starting to put in the vehicles. And if we can be on the leading edge of this, to look at how we can use it. Artificial intelligence, every time I speak to our board, one of our board members asks me about this and how we're being used. And I was, corrected that, yeah, we are using adapted signal control. Now, that's artificial intelligence to a degree. And we did have a little discussion in the working group on, is it really artificial intelligence, or is it just an algorithm that has guardrails? So again, that's up for debate. But again, it's starting to make its place in this area. Signal priority for transit vehicles and early responders. We didn't have much discussion on this. I think this is something we left out. But I'd like for the working group to consider it. I did get, I'm part of a group that meets quarterly, and we had a presentation by the city of Portland on how they have started to use TSP to improve their transit system operations. So I believe that's an opportunity for us to make some gains, because if we're not going to elevate roadways or go below the surface in these major corridors, then we need to look at how we can enhance transit in these corridors to move people. The food pyramid. Mr. Wetzel had highlighted this as, this is nirvana. And, I believe we've already gotten all the way up to advanced applications, because we do a lot, we've done a lot in investing in communication, detection devices, local timing plans, and coordination. So we're there at advanced applications. And I believe we are primed for starting to use it, which is, again, that suggestion of looking at demonstration opportunities. So action steps as we move forward. We are going to be bringing forth the evaluation from the 24-25 retiming. We are trying to look at one of the data platforms where we can use their data as part of the demonstration, as a demonstration to evaluate the results. And if we are successful in doing that, the retiming that we're currently doing will apply the same methodology. And the retiming request that I just sent out, we want to use that platform that's selected to determine how much squeeze we're going to get out of the list we got. And if it's possible, if there's agreement, and I believe from the working group, there's agreement that if some of those intersections and roadways do not provide us with a good squeeze, then perhaps we shouldn't do it. And then if the demonstration goes well, there's agreement, when we do 27, 28, that is the methodology that we'll use. In terms of meeting cadence, we want to meet, the working group wants to meet quarterly. I mentioned this earlier, reality versus theory. I recognize that, yeah, we want to take a data-driven approach. And that's the theory. The reality is that we're going to hear from our stakeholders, our elected officials, because they're going to still get complaints, and we have to respond to that. And one of the stories from my own experience is the Seminole County CTST team. I can remember decades ago, not years ago. That's how aged I am. I started talking about things in decades, not years. For some of the early, you haven't been seasoned yet. Sure, you can talk about years, but at some point you're going to start saying decades ago. And yeah, it was a decade at least. we were leading a campaign called First Worst, where we identified the 10 worst behaviors by travelers and the 10 worst locations, roadways around our region. And housing, you may recall, was part of, because we assembled a team here at TSMO. Doug provided the transportation for us, and we went around the 3 counties and we looked at all these 10 locations. So I go to the Seminole County CTST team and I'm presenting. Now, there are local law enforcement agents, officers on this team. And they didn't agree with the data I was presenting. And they just ripped me up. They came after me. And I'm standing there and I'm looking, I'm like, they all have sidearms and all I got is a cell phone. So this ain't an equal fight at all. But it taught me that that's a resource that we can all use because they are the eyes and ears on our roadways. And they know what's going on and they can tell us. And they were telling me that your data doesn't match reality, theory versus reality. And so I believe we need to be mindful of that as we move forward. Now, start with the end in mind. Here's the end. And Robert Fitzgerald from Seminole County suggested that we change it from traffic signal retiming to signal systems optimization program. And the graphic you see down below, I used the working group as my sample, my focus group. And I said, let's talk about it like a butterfly, right? You know, we're in spring, it's going through the metamorphosis, and we can, on the other end, create this wonderful butterfly. And I said, you guys, I mean, not you guys, but do you think it'll work? And they all said yes. So I don't know, does it work? Are you all getting this? Or maybe not. So maybe I won't use it next time. Well, Madam Chair, that is the end of my presentation. And any questions, comments? Are welcome.
Thank you, Eric. Looking for questions, comments, discussion.
I'll venture a question.
Okay.
Again, Eric, well done. I could go on all day, so I'll apologize. Like, I'll try to keep it to one. But you had a graph at the beginning that showed, like, it was 16 that went to 6. I think was what you were doing on that. Yeah, no, there we go. So streamline. So going from 14 to 6, what does the straightening of the lines represent? Because it starts really kind of stair step looking and then it's straight. What does that mean when I'm looking?
It means that now we've smoothed out where we didn't have arrivals on greens. The traffic is now flowing.
Got it. So it's like a free flow condition.
Yeah. Well, yes, it's gotten
right
better.
from green to green to green, right? So we have like that green window that we're riding through, like the whole corridor. Given that we've just heard, and if I'm wrong, correct me now, because my next question is hinging on that presumption that if I have the 6 and the second X, then I'm just going green to green to green and I'm moving along efficiently, right?
In my own defense,
yeah,
this is work that Dr. Tien has done,
and
that's what he showed us. And I'll defer to some of the traffic engineers, but I'm pretty sure that's what it's showing, that we're going from delays, arrivals on reds, and then we're going to arrivals on greens.
Okay, and and when you said in your own defense, again, I'm sorry for hogging the time. I don't want to feel like this is a gotcha moment. It's not. You're trying to explore your data, so it's not an accusatory statement. I was just curious on that because you said, what is the end state we want, right? Because that's how you create your grading scale, the A to B to C. That's how you figure out if there's juice in the orange. And so I guess my question is, we've just heard a conversation on speed. And we know that traffic signal timing can be used to help control speed. And when you do that, you do kind of go from an X to a stair step because I am introducing a delay on purpose. So I guess maybe something to think about going forward is that sort of cost, I guess, juice of squeeze, as it were, to using that. So I sacrifice that optimum throughput in the name of safety. And is that a benefit, perhaps?
And that's that third from the bottom bullet there, inverse relationship with safety. And we recognize
that. Yes, Sean.
My only thing is, I love the new title, Signal System Optimization Program. So I think that's a much more accurate kind of way that we need to be looking at the whole thing. I mean, we are retiming, but it's a lot more than that.
And I have to
So-
thank Robert Fitzgerald from the great county of Seminole for making that recommendation, under the tutelage of Charlie Wetzel, for making that suggestion. Oh, and I made this comment a couple months ago, that I learned this from a councilman from the city of New York. And he said, we need to make our intersections, we need to think of them as sacred places. Because we all meet there, we all want to leave there too, like we arrived. And so going beyond just retiming those lights, and what else can we do at those intersections? Again, no left turns. You know, I've been in a situation where I tried to make a left turn and people are blowing their horn at me. And then they're riding by and they're yelling, you can't make a left turn there. Well, there's a reason why, because we want to keep the flow of traffic. And then some of the other, suggestions that I made, again, just based on my exposure to other areas, looking at, contraflow lanes, perhaps. I mean, can we do something like, or can we do a demonstration where we model something like that?
I agree with you, Shad. I like the new name as well, because it's not just about retiming, it's making sure the equipment is operational, the detection is working, and it's more than just that one exercise a year, but the daily maintenance of it and operation. So any other questions, comments? Yes.
Eric had mentioned transit signal priority, and I just want to mention in there that besides helping people move that are riding the bus, you can also prevent giving a green phase, the bus goes through and then stops on the other side and blocks your green phase. By doing green extension, the bus goes through, now it's a red phase and it's not blocking the traffic. So it's an additional thought to the other traffic, not just the people on the bus.
Mm-hmm. Very important for our transit corridors. Yes.
And I just want to add to this, like I presented on the time space diagram before, and that was perfect the way you did it.
That diagram?
The time space, the diagram with the two comparison, because it's not everyone gets it. It's difficult for a lot of people to get the concept. So yeah, hats off to you for that. Second thing is just as a suggestion that when it comes to right turn, left turn restrictions, to maintain progression on the flow, I would recommend considering the impacts in the other regions or other areas, how it's going to impact U-turns if that's necessary, and cut through traffic in other areas. So something to consider as well during those studies. I would recommend.
The impact, or the word's not coming to me now, but yeah, you're right. If you know that you can't make that left turn now, you got to figure out, or we as planners have to figure out, well, how do we redirect that traffic?
Any others? All right. Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, Eric. All right, next up is FDOT TSMO data, Mr. Jeremy Dillmore. All right.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you,
Yes.
committee members. I appreciate the order that we had the presentations in this morning, where Eric kind of teed things up for me very well in terms of talking about data and how it's being used in traffic signal timing. You may have seen a presentation that was given by Ms. Katie King, or may have been given by Tushar Patel, that was going ahead and talking about how we're using some of that connected vehicle data, some of that probe vehicle data, and some of our signal retiming efforts. I'm here to go ahead and share a little bit more information about how we're using that in other parts of FDOT. If you guys know Emmanuel Posada, who used to work up at the city of Gainesville, he started out every presentation with a disclaimer statement. So I'm trying to follow in his tradition. What I'm about to talk about is going to be super nerdy at some point in time. If there's something that does not make sense, feel free to stop me. I've lived in this for way, way, way too long, and unfortunately skip a few steps in the process. As you know, we all started an adventure together about 10 years ago of something called integrated corridor management, where we looked at the treatment of not just freeway systems and not just arterial systems, but how the two of them interact. When we have crashes that take place on our freeway system, we often end up with diversions where people end up using the local street network in order to complete their journey. Also, we have crashes that happen on our arterial system where they use alternative routes in order to go ahead and complete that trip. As part of it, we had gone ahead and looked at a model that was trying to replicate not only what was happening right now, but was looking into the future. It was saying what's going to happen in 20 minutes, what's going to happen in 40 minutes, and what's going to happen in 60 minutes. And then allowed us to run multiple different alternatives in order to say, if we were to intervene in a certain way, how would that change the outcome for the public? We looked at performance measures about how we reduce delay overall based upon those diversions. In looking at it, we started feeding our real-time data in, and we started realizing that our real-time data had some problems associated with it. In order to clean it up, it was actually getting us some false conclusions, and it was also taking a little while to run. So as a result, we started going into a very deep dive of how to improve our data quality. So we worked with the University of Central Florida and went ahead and looked at different data types that were available, some of the probe data, including what was then current, which is something called WEJO, which is now part of Streetlight. We looked at the HERE data that the department already had, and we looked at bringing that and ingesting it into various different types of machine learning AI in order to try to project what was going to happen next. What we saw was that there was a potential for us to be able to take probe data as well as what was happening at traffic signals, the ATSPM data that Eric was referring to earlier, and we said we can feed those together in order to fix a lot of our data quality issues. And that was born into something called the HIDE project. Before that, we'd actually engaged in another research effort with the University of Central Florida about us taking the best of traffic signal data and how to put it together. And we actually presented quite a bit nationally on this one, talking about how to fuse that data most effectively. That goes ahead and gives us turning movement counts using something called ATSPM data, as well as some additional traffic signal detection, which we refer to as our intersection movement count cameras. And we use the intersection movement count for distribution and the ATSPM for volume. And we were able to generate turning movement counts very, very quickly and very, very effectively. But it only covered a percentage of our overall system. So with the HIDE project, we were able to take that same structure and then feed it in and combine it with probe vehicle data in order for us to be able to get volume across our entire network. In order to do that, we again leverage that ATSPM and that IMC data, to start with, and the 200 intersections it covered, and we were able to extrapolate that out to 2,000 intersections across the district, including, I think our first one was actually on Lake Mary Boulevard in Seminole County, and we also went ahead and looked at it on a rural roadway to make sure that we weren't biasing this towards areas that had larger demand. In July of 2023, we went ahead and piloted on those two corridors, and then we moved up to a scale-up phase and are now in the monthly service phase with our vendor. This is the coverage that we get overall across District 5. So you see it's across all counties. Where there's more traffic signals, there's more coverage. So in our areas that are denser, we see a lot more dots. I am sorry that there really are 2,000 dots that are sitting here on this map. So they do overlap quite a bit, but you see there's really good coverage in the Metro Orlando area. Throughout the Metro Plan Orlando area, it's actually quite good coverage. So how it works, again, because there have to be nerdy diagrams to go along with everything, is that we're going ahead and pulling data from our traffic signal. We're sending it off to our vendor. Our vendor is then taking in data from probe vehicle sources, so from those connected cars, and then they're producing back to us traffic volume, which feeds into what we refer to as a Kafka instance. That's just a data broker that's able to move data around effectively. So we went through all this effort of putting this stuff into place. How accurate is it? So there's a lot of, I think, concern about using probe vehicle data that it's not representative of what's happening out on the roadway. So what we went ahead and looked at was data validation, where we went ahead and had field counts done at 13 different intersections that were specifically for this effort. We also took every count that we had done as part of our resurfacing program. We used that as well. We went ahead and benchmarked that from the November 10th up through the 12th of December. And we looked at Flow Labs Day, was the 28-day period that they were collecting sample data from. And we went ahead and looked at the date of December 10th for actual benchmarking. So when we looked at whether or not there was existing ATSPM data, if there was an integrated traffic signal out there, you saw all but one of them actually was that we were able to go ahead and get some of that data from that signal. So overall, we were getting quite a bit of data back into the system. When we looked at metrics, if you're familiar with traffic modeling, again, I told you this was super nerdy. We use something called GEH. GEH tries to avoid biasing towards low sample volumes, but it's a measure of effectiveness that's been used in modeling for decades. Generally, if you're under 5, that's considered to be excellent data, that you're working very, very effectively. If you're at 10, you've got good enough to be able to make decisions on. If you're higher than 10, you probably shouldn't use it. It's probably not the greatest. There's a lot of research behind this about why those measures make sense. And we get into something that also has to do with a Pearson correlation. This has to do with distributions and whether distributions are representative. And we can talk about mean squared error too. But overall, what it's basically saying there is when the distribution moves to one direction, the other follows with it. The other way to look at this is rather than using all those fancy terms is you can look at it with your eyes and say, so when traffic gets worse in one data set, does it appear to get worse in the other data set? And the answer is yes, then you have a high correlation, right? Which says your Pearson correlation says you're good. So we went ahead and looked at it. And what we did see with our Flow Labs data is that as traffic grew on a 15-minute by 15-minute period, that we had a high correlation that the Flow Labs data also moved in that same direction. So we said this was highly correlated data. When we also then looked at what the GEH was, we looked at both their single day data as well as their multi-day data and saw that the single day with just sampling very, very quickly, that had a relatively high GEH. So it had greater than 5 on about half of the time. But when we waited the 28 days for them to collect more probe vehicle data, that greatly diminished and we started to get very high quality information. This is a look at a distribution. If you're along the 45, that means that what you're comparing it to and what it is are exactly lining up. As you go ahead and move off of that 45, it indicates a bias. And what you see here is that as volumes grow, that we see a bias towards it overestimating counts. So even though we're seeing the majority of the data is within a range that it's very, very useful, it's high quality model data, that what are seeing is that there's a bias, which means that there's an opportunity for even further correction to even improve the quality that much more. So with that, we looked at this. We also worked with MetroPlan Orlando to discuss other data sets. We did the same thing with the data set that MetroPlan Orlando buys, which is streetlight data. Both of them were graded out as being very, very effective. So what we end up kind of concluding from that is that probe vehicle data, that this methodology works. There's not one particular vendor that you necessarily have to go to in this space, but that it is a very viable technology overall as a way to look at systems. So the idea that you're looking at using it for traffic signal retiming makes a ton of sense. All of the super nerdy numbers that I went through go ahead and indicate that that actually is a very representative set of data. So we started looking at where it might make sense to use this in planning. We talked about it being used for our traffic signal retiming. So what we have been looking at using it for is our next round of traffic model updates. So normally when we go ahead and get data, they're tube counts. They say this is what the approach volume looks like, but when you look at the individual movements at intersections, which have influence on your origin destination, those are not directly correlated. So this data, because it's intersection level resolution, gives us a more granular way of going ahead and capturing what's actually happening with movements within our model. It also has the idea of it being an everyday sample. We can look at seasonality, we can look at reliability, metrics that historically have been applied as after the fact adjustments of volume to capacity ratios. being that you're the TSMO subcommittee, or excuse me, committee, that what reliability is the name of the game, right? We're talking about that there's more occurrences that happen on our roadway than just purely volume and capacity. And this allows us a direct measurement of those rather than having to make them assumptions or just adjustments to models or to VC ratios. There's also a design traffic reasonableness thing that we could look at. So this was something that was an interesting lesson learned. We had gone through, this is the I-4, 429, 417 interchange. So I get to tell a story here that might be a little more effective than me throwing a bunch of numbers at you. We went ahead and had 2 stories of 2 different ramps. At one point in time, this was going through design. It had a massive flyover ramp that was going from westbound I-4 to southbound 417. That was driven by a very, very high model demand. When we went ahead and looked at that, as time went on, as we were going through the design process, what we saw was that those demands were not materializing, that the model was overestimating those volumes. So we went ahead and changed the design through a VE process at around 60% plans to remove that flyover and to put a loop ramp in instead. It saved a lot of cost. It was able to move the project forward more quickly. Again, this was us overestimating demand. If you look at the one that's in red, that particular movement, we went ahead and actually had an underestimation in demand. The development that happened along the west side of I-4, that happened a little faster than we expected. The volumes that were there by the time we were starting construction exceeded our design year. It meant that we were building a 1-lane ramp and we actually needed a 2-lane ramp to function opening year. We had to go through a SA with our contractor in order to go ahead and get a 2-lane ramp out there. So when we start looking at, is our design traffic really keeping pace? The days of I'm going to go collect counts, I'm going to go ahead and put it into a PD&E, I'm going to come up with a design alternative, and then we're going to go through our development process that may take multiple years and not look at it again until it comes out the other end. What we're saying is that this allows us to very cheaply, very effectively go ahead and see, have patterns change. Are the things that we thought were going to be really high, they're turning out not to be? Are the things that we thought were going to be low that are actually turning out to be a lot higher demand? That way we can try to make adjustments in real time so that we end up with the right product out there. We don't overbuild, we don't underbuild, we serve the need of the community. So this is an in-process thing that we're going through right now, is about looking at inventorying all of the projects that we have in our work program, about their design traffic year, what the base year is for the actual design, as well as when the data was collected and what the funding year is. So as we're kind of getting close to getting a project out there, we can again make adjustments based on what's happening out in the field. We also look at project prioritization, excuse me. Mentioned before about the idea of future year forecasts and what's happening there. Traditionally, when we look at trying to get projects out, we have these big giant PD&Es that are very expensive or very difficult to go ahead and get funded, but we may have present day issues. There may be opportunities for us to advance portions or sections of it. So what this allows us to do is to generate, again, the design traffic volume, the immediate use. We can get it out there and we can go ahead and iterate alternatives in order for us to be able to get an interim project release without us going through all the expense of the data collection. So some of the examples of what we've looked at here is there's some internal metrics called health scores that we've looked at. We looked at back of queue estimation. So allowing us to understand when there's queue through issues, again, things that you guys see as part of your signal retiming efforts, and allowing us to go ahead and prioritize the need for some interim project relief within areas, and also to look at some of even the isolated corridors. We've also looked at some alternative assessments. So us going through and saying, how do we look at a scenario that we've got a project on? Is this really the right fit? So we go ahead and can again apply today's volume to those conditions in order to see if there's something that we can do with little data collection and still be able to get a project out there. So some examples of that where we had actually no project, we had no base traffic, but we had heard a lot of complaints from the public. We had a State Road 44, it's a 2-lane arterial roadway. For us to normally do that, we would spend 2.5 to 3 months collecting data. in order to be able to look at what problem the public's actually complaining to us about. Instead, what we went ahead and did was we just downloaded the data off of that page. We were able to immediately push that into Synchro. We were able to run analysis on it. We were able to conclude what kind of improvements were needed, a turn lane here, a turn lane there, in order to address it, develop concept sketches, and get a result before we would even have time to even collect the data before. So this had a turnaround of about a 2-week period for us to do an entire corridor's worth of assessment, where before we couldn't even collect the data in 4 times the amount of time. So it's some interesting use cases. As y'all are thinking about your individual use within the TSMO subcommittee, just understand that within the program as a whole, that there's other uses of that data. And it's something that can justify the spend that's out there from agency standpoint, right? You want to be responsive to the public. We want to have well-timed traffic signals, but we also want to look at our spend and make sure that we're using that money as effectively as is possible. And this is an opportunity to just leverage what we're doing here as a committee to also be able to do more within the agency as a whole. So with that, I think that was it for me. Any questions? Hasn't definitely got one. Go for it, brother.
Great presentation again, Jeremy. In addition to Flow Labs, is there any other vendors that give you turning movement counts?
Yes, so we went ahead and looked at streetlight data, and we also looked at replica data. Replica seems to be a little bit of a different use case because they don't try to directly represent what's happening out on the roadway. They try to do a demand model representation. So they're a little bit of a different case, but the streetlight data definitely is useful at the same kind of turning movement level information, and they also capture that day by day kind of change. We also have looked at the use of INRIX. And INRIX, if you're trying to look at an individual day, that's not what their market is, right? They try to say, let's look at trends. So if you aggregate things across multiple days and you try to address the trend, not necessarily this day, this time, they're very, very useful for that. So I think there's multiple vendors in this space, and each one kind of has their own twist on how they do things, but they're all very useful and can all be applied successfully to these different kinds of approaches. Yeah.
Questions?
Thanks, Jeremy. Thanks for the presentation. For the record, I don't think it was too nerdy, I think. Real quick question
statistical terms for you, Brian, if I need to.
How reliable is that back at queue length distance information?
So when we look at trying to validate data, that was one that we have not been able to exactly nail down, because when you try to measure the back of queue, right, on limited access facilities, we have cameras to be able to see where those are. On arterial roadways, we have our cameras are located at intersections, and our ability to then turn and to get validated data. We just have not gone to that level of effort yet. So I can't say that it's 100% reliable. When we've used it to try to line up with public comment about where they're saying, I'm waiting and this is a problem, it lines up really, really well. So it may be the canary in the coal mine, but I couldn't tell you to take it to the bank that when it says 180 feet, it's not 190. Like I don't know that it's that level. We haven't done that kind of validation. Does that make sense?
Yeah, thanks.
Yeah.
Any other questions? Yes.
Jeremy, yeah, I think it was a great presentation as well. And I think based on, because I did some reading on this prior to the meeting, and I see the benefits across the board. I don't know if, as far as how communities would see it regarding, let's say, excuse me, I mean, for instance, the main benefit that I see for myself is where the data may not be accurate. So reliability of the data. So I'm assuming, like, for instance, you said there's fusion of data. So you have the probe data, and then you have the actual on-street detection data. So was there any studies done to show like the level of accuracy to prompt this or to promote this more, to say that this is a benefit because of that reason?
So there were studies that had taken place 6-7 years ago that went ahead and looked at it and said, there's problems with the data set. What we were seeing through our work with UCF is that there looked like that there was enough sampling now that we could overcome quite a bit of it. When we've looked at benchmarking it, what we've seen is that the data, you still need to take an eye to it, right? Don't ever turn off your engineering mind and just accept anything blindly. That also goes, by the way, when you have manual counts, do the same thing. That there's always a potential for issues to crop up. But overall, it seems like when you collect enough data, when there's enough points that come in from the probe vehicle sources, we are seeing that it's very, very useful. It looks like it's very good data to be used. It doesn't mean it's perfect. There are times where something goes cattywampus. Where we've seen the biggest issue, oddly enough, there have been car dealerships nearby. And what we're thinking is that there's an oversampling of newer cars. And where is there an overrepresentation of newer cars? Near car dealerships. At the same time, what we've looked at is there's that bias that we know appears to be in place. So the course that we've been trying to take is to look at a tube count to be put into place to give you a representative, like a baseline, to say this is what reasonable looks like as my volumes, and then to be able to then look across the corridor and then say, is the probe source data I'm getting lining up with that? If so, I can trust it. If it doesn't appear to be so, then obviously I've got something that's gotten skewed and out of line. So we do think that you do have to look at where there's traffic breaks and get a sample within those traffic breaks. But overall, we're not saying no counts. Our estimation is we think we can go down to 1/4 to 1/5 the number of counts that we've done before. And also when we get public complaints about things, we can look into them with more detail than we have in the past. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it makes
Okay,
sense.
cool.
Thanks.
Okay. Nobody wants to ask Jeremy about the mean square error? Gosh.
We all took stats at one point in time. Right? And we all loved it.
Jeremy. No, that's good. I mean, the key thing I heard from you is Flow Labs is very appropriate for our signal retiming, signal optimization program, and kind of incorporating that in our next steps.
That is a very reasonable vendor. I won't say it's the only one.
Mhm.
And when you look at it, one of the things where we ended up with them is it went through a competitive procurement. We knew what our use cases were. We went through and kind of said, who's going to offer us the best value proposition for the agency. So I do think there are multiple vendors in this space. Our analysis has said that there are multiple folks that can do the work. So, for what it's worth.
Okay. All right. Well, thank you very much, Jeremy.
Thank you.
All right, we have one common presentation with the TAC meeting. For those that are able, we encourage you to stay for the TAC meeting to view that presentation. That's going to be a status update on Vision Zero, Central Florida. There are several items in the general information section of your agenda packet for your review under section 3. There's a list of upcoming meetings in your agenda. Some of those significant ones are the Metro Plan Orlando Board meeting that will be on May 13th. And the next TSMO meeting will be on May 29th at our normal time of 8:30. Want to open it up to members. Are there any final comments from our members? Okay. We have our final public comment opportunity. If any members of the public wish to comment, please use the raise hand function. You'll be recognized, or dial *9 on your phone keypad. We'll unmute your mic. After you are recognized, please state your name and address for the record and limit your comments to 2 minutes or less. Do we have anyone joining us virtually who would like to make a comment?
No hands raised.
All right. Anyone in person that would like to make a comment?
No comments received.
All right. And any written comments that were submitted before the meeting?
No.
Okay. At this time, if there's no further business, we stand adjourned at what is it, 9:39.
Very good.
Okay.